Hello, everybody, and we are going to be getting into the percussion family today. So we have some things here to remember. First, remember that the percussion family is only one of four families. There are brass, woodwinds, string, and finally percussion. But the percussion family has some special things that go along with it, and even it can be broken down into different families all by itself. And in fact, that is the big question of the day and what we are going to try and answer. What are the three types of percussion instruments? Now, it is important to remember that a percussion instrument, any instrument that you play by hitting, shaking, or scraping, is in the percussion family. And the percussion family itself can be broken into three different groups. There are drums, which probably everybody can picture in their head. There are keyboards. And then finally, there's the auxiliary group. And that's kind of the weirdest one of all, but we'll get to that in just a second. First, let's talk about drums. Drums are instruments that are usually made of some kind of shell with a drum head pulled tight over at least one side. And sometimes those drum heads can go over both sides. The shell can be made of different things, wood, metal, or whatever. They can be played with hands or a mallet or stick. Drums can come in many different sizes and be made of many different materials. The different sizes and the different materials can all change how the drum sounds. Drums are often used to add rhythmic interest, to help keep a steady beat, and to provide extra excitement to the music. You can picture a snare drum, which is a very common drum, a bass drum, which is a very large drum, so it plays very low notes. But there's also some, like these timpani here, that look a little bit different than the others. And in fact, if you look at that picture, you can see a little pedal on the bottom, and you can adjust that pedal and get a different note. Keyboard instruments are something different entirely. Keyboard instruments can play specific notes, and unlike drums, can be used to play melodies and harmonies. If I play a bunch of notes on a drum, it's going to be rhythmic, but it's not going to be melodic, whereas a keyboard instrument is going to actually play specific notes. Keyboard instruments can be made of lots of materials, but they're usually made of different kinds of wood or metal. Different mallets are used and can create different sounds depending on what the mallet is made of. A harder mallet has more of a sharp sound, whereas a softer mallet is going to have a softer sound. Keyboard instruments are built in ways where the keys look like they are in the same shape as a piano. In fact, a piano, even though it's a string instrument, could also fall into this keyboard family. So you can picture a xylophone, and if you look carefully at that xylophone, even though they're not black and white keys, you can see they follow the same pattern, with the keys on the bottom being like the white keys, and those keys up on the top that have the spaces in between being like the black keys. A xylophone has wooden bars, but a vibraphone, which is also part of the keyboard family, has metal bars. But not all keyboard instruments have that exact look. In fact, you can get some keyboard instruments like these chimes, where instead of having bars at all, they have big metal tubes. So even though it doesn't look like the xylophone or the vibraphone, it's still very much a keyboard instrument. Now, the auxiliary family. This is all of the other percussion stuff. It's kind of like the leftovers. Not drums, not keyboards, but everything else. This group has the most variety and is definitely the hardest to describe just because there are so many different instruments that fall into this category. This family of instruments can be used for many things, but it's often used for either very high periods of emotion or as a sound effect in music. This includes instruments like cymbals, a triangle, a tambourine, or maracas, all of these other things, they are hit, shaken, or scraped, but they're not drums and they're not keyboards. They're part of the auxiliary family. Fun little fact here about percussion instruments. People who play these instruments do not just play one instrument, they play them all. It's very different than somebody who plays a woodwind instrument or a brass instrument or a string instrument. Usually people who play an instrument in that family just play one. If you're a flute player, you play the flute. If you're a tuba player, you play the tuba. That's the instrument that you play. But if you're a percussionist, you don't just play one drum or one keyboard. You have to actually learn to play all of those instruments. The percussion family has a lot of variety in it, but hopefully you can now tell the difference between which percussion instrument falls into which part of the percussion family.